The courtroom was thick with tension. Reporters crowded the benches, cameras flashed, and the defendant sat at the front, head bowed, wrists chained. David Martinez, a father of 3, had been painted as a criminal for months. The prosecution claimed he had broken into the home of an elderly widow, stolen her valuables, and terrorized her. The case looked airtight. Photographs, stolen property, even the testimony of a decorated officer. The jury was ready to convict. The judge was preparing to call the next witness. And then it happened. A small, trembling voice cut through the silence. "He's not telling the truth." Everyone turned. At the back of a room stood a little girl in a unicorn dress, clutching a pink tablet. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her eyes were wide, but she stood firm. "I saw what happened," she said, her voice shaking. "I recorded it." Gasps erupted. The bailiff moved forward, but the judge raised a hand. "Bring her up here. Let the child speak." The courtroom, moments ago ready to condemn an innocent man, was about to witness a truth no one expected. David Martinez wasn't a thief. He was a hard-working construction worker who had lived in the same neighborhood for years. Everyone knew him as the man who mowed his elderly neighbors' lawns, carried their groceries, and fixed their leaky faucets. Especially Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, a frail 78-year-old widow. David often checked in on her after work. She treated him like a son. But 3 months before the trial, Eleanor's home was raided. Jewelry, cash, and heirlooms disappeared. When police arrived, they found David on the scene, with the stolen goods in his hands. The arrest was immediate. The photos were damning. And the testimony of Officer Richard Williams, a 15-year veteran of the force, sealed his fate. The community was stunned. How could a man like David turn on the woman he had helped for years? His wife cried in court, swearing he was innocent. But the evidence seemed unshakable. What no one realized was that Officer Williams himself was the true criminal. On the morning of the robbery, David heard Eleanor screaming from inside her home. He rushed in, only to find Officer Williams, supposedly there on a welfare check, stuffing her jewelry into his pockets. When David confronted him, Williams pulled a cruel trick. He shoved the stolen items into David's hands, snapped photos with his phone, and barked, "Looks like you're the thief now." Moments later, backup arrived. David was arrested. Williams told the story smoothly, claiming he caught the suspect red-handed. And just like that, an innocent man's life was shattered. What Williams didn't know was that someone else had seen everything. Emma, a 6-year-old girl, had been playing in her backyard next door. She heard Mrs. Henderson scream. Curious, she peeked through the fence and saw the confrontation unfold. Her mother had recently taught her how to use her tablet to record videos. So, with the innocent logic only a child has, she pressed record. The entire setup, the officers stealing, planting evidence, and threatening David, was captured on shaky but undeniable footage. But Emma was scared. She told her mother days later. At first, her mom didn't believe her. But when she showed the video, her mother gasped. Lawyers were contacted. Emma's testimony was requested. But until that day in court, no one knew what she had. When the judge allowed the video to be played, the room went silent. On the giant courtroom screen, Williams could be seen pocketing Mrs. Henderson's jewelry. Then, in grainy but clear audio, his voice hissed, "This will make it look like you did it." The jury gasped. The prosecutor dropped his papers. David's wife covered her mouth and sobbed. The evidence was undeniable. The judge turned to Williams, her voice cold as steel. "Officer Williams, you are under arrest." The decorated cop who once stood tall in the community was handcuffed before the very people he had sworn to protect. But the story didn't end there. Under questioning, Williams cracked. He admitted he wasn't working alone. Several officers had been running a scheme, targeting vulnerable people like the elderly and immigrants, planting evidence, and framing innocent neighbors to cover their tracks. The little girl's video had opened a door no one could close. Within weeks, multiple officers were arrested. 17 wrongful convictions were overturned. The FBI launched a federal probe into the department. A whole network of corruption collapsed, all because a child told the truth. When David was finally released, his children clung to him, crying. His wife whispered, "We never stopped believing in you." But the moment that silenced everyone came when David knelt down, hugged little Emma, and said through tears, "You saved my life." Emma, shy but firm, looked up and replied, "My mom says you should always tell the truth, even if it's scary." David Martinez went home a free man. Officer Williams went to prison. Mrs. Henderson got her belongings back. But more importantly, the world was reminded of something powerful. Sometimes the strongest voice in the room doesn't come from a judge, a lawyer, or a cop. Sometimes it comes from a 6-year-old girl in a unicorn dress holding a tablet. And 3 small words, "He is lying," can bring down an empire of corruption.